Okay. Yeah, we're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the West Craven Area Committee at the unusual time of 2 p.m. in an afternoon. And I could be tempted to say that it's been held in the afternoon because it's such wonderful weather, and having a meeting is one way of not enjoying the weather. But we are where we are. There's a crush of meetings with Easter coming up, and as a consequence, a couple of area committees had to take the afternoon slots in order to be able to fit everything in. So welcome to the meeting, and the first thing I'll do is ask members of the committee to introduce themselves and officers that are attending, and then I'll explain more about how the committee operates. So my name is David Whip. I'm a councillor here in West Craven and I chair this area committee. Can I go then to Colin? If you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Colin Carter. I'm a councillor for Earby Ward.
Thank you. Jane.
Good afternoon. Jane Mills, councillor for Cotswold in Barnoldswick.
Thank you, Jane. Now you're hidden behind an icon. Are you able to reveal yourself in all your glory, or is
I
that...
can see Jane.
All right. This is weird, isn't it? Yeah, you're an icon to me. I don't know what you are to live stream, but anyway, there you go.
Try setting large gallery view on.
Me? I don't want to do that.
Or the live stream.
Okay. Tom, you are speaking, so if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Tom Whip.
Planning and Economic Development.
Thank you. I've got Kevin, and I think Kevin is Kevin Singleton.
Kevin Singleton, Salford Parish Council.
Thank you, Kevin. Yep. Oh, and you've just burst into life on my screen, which is a delight to behold. Ken.
Thank you, Chairman. Ken Hartley, a councillor for Craven Ward in Barnoldswick.
Joanne.
Joanne Eccles, a committee administrator at Pendle Council.
Thank you. Tim.
Sergeant Tim Hitchin, neighbourhood sergeant covering Colne and West Craven.
Thank you very much. And I've got Mike Williams. Mike. Well, Mike's here.
Hi. Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you, Mike. Yeah. And Mike's here for the item on reopening town centres, and I'm going to propose that we bring that forward in the meeting so that Mike can get on and do other things. He's probably doing other things anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Whip.
Okay. And we've also got a speaker for the meeting, Helen Hansen. Can we just check, Helen, that you can switch your mic on and off, okay?
Yes, I think so, David. Good afternoon, everybody.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Right.
It's David Walker.
Right. Sorry, it's because people have moved around my screen. David Walker's disappeared and is hidden behind an icon as well. David.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you. David Walker, Environmental Services Manager, Area Coordinator for West Craven.
Thank you very much. Just to explain, this is a working meeting of a Pendle Council Committee. We do have to abide by various rules, and one of which is members of the public wishing to speak need to give notice on planning applications, and Helen Hansen has duly given notice to speak on the application relating to Aynham's Hill Farm, and after we've dealt with the police and community safety items, I'll bring that forward so that, again, you don't have to be waiting for any greater length of time than necessary. And I'll also bring item 9 forward so that Mike Williams can get about other business as well. In terms of the meeting. We've only got the one speaker, and just need to deal with procedural items, declarations of interests. Could I ask if there are any? Nope. We don't have anybody for public question time, which is item 2. So we'll move swiftly on and go to the approval of the minutes. Would somebody be prepared to move those?
I'll move acceptance, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ken. And a seconder?
I'll second, David.
Thank you very much, Jane. As Joanne was saying earlier on, I need to go into the town hall at some time and sign a year's worth of minutes from the virtual meetings that we've been having. And it's at this point, just to report that we do have apologies from Marjorie Adams, who had a late appointment this morning. She was concerned they shouldn't get back from that. Are there any further apologies, please? Nope. Okay. Right. Item 4 then is police and community safety issues, and we have Tim Hitchin here, who is speaking to that, and we have got some statistics. Tom, are you in a position to put them up, please? Tim, do you want to introduce this, please?
Yeah, this is the West Craven crime figures for March of 2021, which we compare against the same figures for March of 2020, just to show the correlation between whether crime is increasing or decreasing in certain areas. So just looking at the figures off here, the first category is residential burglary. We've had only 3 offences of residential burglary in the West Craven area this month, which is 1 less than for March of 2020. In relation to commercial burglaries, there have only been 2, which is the same as last year. Vehicle crime has shown a small increase of 2. When they broke the figures down, there was 1 in Craven, 1 in Earby, and 6 in Coates. When we actually dug into those figures, 5 of those 6 vehicle crimes are slashed tyres in the same area that occurred on the same, roughly the same time. So in effect, that would give vehicle crime a very, very low statistic. We would be down to only 3 offences there, but obviously it would put the criminal damage statistic marginally up. But vehicle crime, commercial burglary and residential burglary are definitely nothing to worry about this month. In relation to hate crime, we've had no incidents reported at all this month, which is the same as last month. Assaults were showing as 9 across the area for the month, which was an increase of 2. But again, those numbers are still incredibly low for an area of the size of West Craven. In relation to thefts, which is all other thefts other than burglary and vehicle crime, we've only recorded 8 crimes, which is 1 down from the same month last year. Criminal damage, as we've discussed before, the figures here will show a decrease of 3, but actually if you factor in the damage to the car tyres all occurring on one occasion, that would actually show an increase of 2 crimes. But again, for the area, that is incredibly low. All crime was showing as 64 offences reported to us in March of this year, which is 7 down on March of 2020. We also bring the ASB figures to this meeting, which have more recently been broken down to show the effect of COVID-related reports, which the police classify under antisocial behaviour as a recording tool. For non-COVID-related ASB. So that is historically what we would normally have categorised antisocial behaviour. We have 38 incidents reported to us. This month last year, we were showing 58. COVID breaches obviously wouldn't have taken place until later on in March, so I think that figure represents a decrease in the number of reports for ASB to us. However, looking at the COVID-related offences, house parties are categorised under the COVID as the gathering of people would breach COVID regulations. We've shown 14 incidents where that's been reported as an issue, and 10 other non-standard COVID breaches, which is a mixed bag across the board, really. Again, although we are aware that antisocial behaviour is an issue for a lot of residents across West Craven, the numbers are still fairly low, but I appreciate that any offence or any incident reported can be an issue to those that it affects. And we are doing a lot of work around issues of ASB, predominantly amongst youths in Barnoldswick and Earby. And they are the two monthly priorities for the West Graven area.
Thank you, Tim. I've got a couple of people who've raised their hands. First of all, Tom Whip, and then I've got Ken Hartley.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tim. The house party figure 14 across West Craven, do you know if that's sort of typical in terms of population size? Is that a typical amount of house parties for an area this size? Or should we be concerned about, a huge amount or what?
I can't give you a definitive answer in comparison to Cone, which is the other set of figures that I would look at. But I think for an area of this size, and house parties are reported to us as basically a slightly noisy party where one neighbour reports that their neighbours have got people round and they're having a drinks party. Sometimes it can just be neighbours unhappy with the fact that somebody next door to them has got friends and relatives round for a party. We have dedicated COVID cars, which are double crewed car, working every night, late afternoon into the early night, that deal with these sort of matters. So it's not something that neighbourhood teams particularly get hold of. But the reported incidence of 14 is quite low, really, for an area that covers two reasonable sized towns across 29 days that these figures have been reported. I think that's quite low. I can have a look and get back to you and measure them against the same sort of figures in Cone, if you like, but I won't be able to do that at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, Ken.
Sorry, I'd lost my microphone to unmute. Thank you, Chair. Tim, there's a lot of activity appeared to be on Facebook this morning about overnight damage to cars again, but this time on Conway Crescent. Maybe it's something that you can pick up. I'd like to follow up a little bit on Tom's question. The 14 house parties, is that 14 individual parties or 14 people who participated in house parties?
The way the figures are recorded, it's 14 reported incidents. So it is more than likely it's 14 individual separate parties, but it could well be that one party has been reported by more than one person. But it's usually the case that one person affected by the party will report it. That will create one incident. And it's not always the case that we get multiple reports. So I would say these are likely to be 14 individually reported parties, not people.
Thanks very much, Tim. I'm even more confused now because the number means even less from what you said than what it did before. Not to worry about that. Thanks very much for answering. I'll like to come back at a later stage in this discussion, Chair, if I may.
Yeah, I've got Jane wanting to come in.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just on the crime locally, reading comments on Facebook and social media, whatnot, seems to be a lot of crime that people are witnessing is not actually being reported due to reasons of it's too complex, takes too long, this, that and the other. Now, one of your colleagues was trying to promote Lancashire Talking in a previous meeting, and someone that I know of had tried to go on Lancashire Talking to report some crime, and they really struggled with it. And I must admit, I went on that site a few days back to have a look, and I was of the same opinion. It's not that good to be able to go to this place, and this is where you need to go on and report whatever needs reporting. I did come across this stayintheknow.co.uk, but that's the first time I've really come across that in all these meetings that we've had at West Craven Area Committee. And I think that needs to be more, if that's where you go, the website to go onto it to report these things, then I think that should be made clearer.
Can I before Tim comes in, I think there's a misapprehension about Lancashire Talking being a place to report crimes, because that's not the case. There is the ability to report crimes or incidents online on the constabulary website. Alternative people should phone 101 if it's not an emergency, or obviously 999 if it is. But the Lancashire Talking is more a facility for officers within the constabulary to feed back to residents about issues in their area, or through the surveys that are carried out from time to time for residents to flag up, well, there's a general problem of, say, antisocial behaviour at Victory Park or wherever it may be, rather than use it to try and flag up a particular problem at a particular time at a particular place. That either should go to 101 or perhaps report online. So apologies if there's the wrong message being given out, because I've been promoting Lancashire Talking, but very much as that lower level interaction between the police and residents rather than a frontline reporting tool. But Tim, having stolen all your thunder, I'll let you come back in now.
You probably summed up exactly what I was going to say. There is a two-way messaging service on Lancashire Talking, in that it can't be preempted by the user at your end. If we send a message out, either reporting some issues or asking residents in a specific area for their or for their opinions on any issues, they can report back to us and inform us of any issues there. But again, we wouldn't want to use that as a way to report crimes. It has to be done, as you've already mentioned, through 101, 999 if it's an emergency, or the online reporting system. And I do appreciate that 101 has had its issues, and at certain times of the day, it is difficult to get through. But we just have to reiterate the message that if somebody feels a crime is occurring or has occurred and they feel strongly enough about it, just to sort of ride it out, sit on 101, wait till they get through and report it, or alternatively, use the online reporting system, which again I appreciate, and I haven't used it myself, but I appreciate it's not the easiest thing, and it doesn't just get the message through in 5 seconds as Facebook might, but it does need to be done properly so we can record the accurate figures and we can respond to whatever incidents are occurring in those areas. We do monitor Facebook, not as an official police tool, but the PCSOs and PCs that work in West Craven and Colne generally live in the area. So we do keep an eye on those types of issues, but they do officially need reporting to us, I think is the message I have to get through.
Thank you. Just before we move off the crime reporting, and I did pick this up off Facebook, there was theft of a high-value commercial tractor, not agricultural tractor, a tractor unit from an Arctic from a compound in Bonalswick just a couple of days ago. Has there been any progress in that investigation?
I do know about that one. Stolen from Ousledale Foundry. I've had a look at the log. The owner is aware of its last known location. And the only thing I can say there is it would prove difficult for us or him to get to that, but he will be aware of that. And I think he understands the realistic nature of where that vehicle now is. We are looking at a bit of CCTV to try and see if we can find the suspects for that offence. I do know we've checked ANPR, and the last sighting we had of it was in the M65 leaving Lancashire. Other than that, there's not a lot I can report on, but yeah, very, very strange one. As you say, a 16-plate Arctic tractor unit, high value, and it is unusual for this area. We get plant machinery stolen, we get cars stolen from time to time, but I don't think we've had I can't remember a tractor unit getting stolen recently, and there haven't been any others certainly in the east of the county that I'm aware of. Hopefully it's a one-off and it's not something that will be targeted.
Shocking. I've got Ken wanted to come back in. Ken?
Thank you, Chair. Are we moving on to community safety issues?
Yes, we are. Just to make sure that there aren't any other crime statistics questions. Mike, you've joined us recently. Have you got anything on that? No.
No, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I hadn't read the leader on the agenda saying it was 2 o'clock, so please accept my apologies. Nothing on crime at the moment.
Okay, I began the meeting by expressing my concern that nobody tried logging into the meeting at 7 p.m. this evening, but I appreciate you joining late. Thank you. Right, going on to issues of community concern, Ken.
I have 2 questions on that, Chair, if I may, to Sergeant Hitchin. Firstly, is associated with the spate of concerns associated with the spa on Skipton Road. Has that activity subsided, died down, or are we still currently actively monitoring what's happening down there?
Just to clarify, Ken, is this from a couple of months ago when we discussed the petrol station issue there?
Sorry, yeah, Sergeant Hitchin, yeah, it was actually talked about the last time that the police were on here, where we were concerned about the number of thefts and people driving away without paying for their fuel and loud cars congregating in the car park and their associated activity, which may or may not have been associated with vehicles themselves. Yeah, it was a whole spate of things that were located in that new word that I discovered this morning, hyperlocation. In other words, a very small area.
I've got PCSO Kevin Dolphin with me as well. We're both looking a bit perplexed, but I do know what you're talking about now. But we've had no particular issues there throughout the month, and we've certainly not had any reports of drive-offs that I know, and certainly not that huge increase, which we were potentially linking to some civil debt. But yeah, we're not having that issue at all.
Thank you, Sergeant. That's great. And the second refers to a conversation that we had the last time that you personally were with us, which happened to be the last meeting, where we talked about speeding issues around various areas, not only on public roads, but in Victory Park and other places. And we were talking about deploying the speed guns around, the community provided speed gun that particularly, which may or may not deter people. Personally, yesterday, one motor vehicle travelling in the opposite direction to me between Thornton in Craven and Barnoldswick, with an exceptionally loud exhaust, was doing well over 60 miles an hour. I'm just asking, has there been any speed monitoring activity within West Craven over the last month or so?
We've not managed to do any over the last month. A lot of the team were redirected to a rather serious incident that occurred at Briarfield at the beginning of the month, which warranted several scenes, house-to-house operations. That took us away for quite a bit. As the weather increases and the daylight gets better, we've more opportunity now to do it. So I would say that the next time I speak to you, I will be able to tell you that we have carried out activity in the month of April across West Graven and other areas for the next month. Okay. Just in relation to that, I know Kevin's just reminded me that one of the issues we were having around Barnoldswick, but also in Earby, was around uninsured young drivers driving what we call pool cars around the area, causing a nuisance, speeding, and potentially linked to drugs, the information we were given. Only a week ago now, we did actually find one of those vehicles that we've been looking for, a VW Golf. That was seized. The driver was arrested, subsequently charged with various motoring offences, and the car was taken off the road. So that is one very positive to sort of take away, and hopefully that will hit that small group of young men who choose to drive uninsured without driving licences and causing a nuisance and the danger on the roads around West Craven.
Thank you, Sergeant. I'd just like to draw your attention to one particular area, and again, it's an area that crops up very, very regularly in terms of reports on social media, and that is the Barnoldswick-Kelbrook Road, particularly through the 30 limits in Salterfirth, where even though we've got SPIDs either side of the village, they are being ignored by particularly the boy racer types. And the number of reports that I see that people overtaking, necessitating them passing down the centre bollards in Salterfirth on the wrong side of the road, it is quite astounding. There's certainly at least one or two incidents every week, and therefore if and when you can find capacity to get either traffic or yourselves monitoring that activity through Salterpeth, you certainly got my gratitude, I'll tell you.
Thank you. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Just diving back to the Kelbrook Road Spa, I think, not the Skipton Road one. I have a friend who works there, and it's been broken into twice in the last year. And I think just before the beginning of the last year, the ATM was also stolen. So I mean, there obviously is quite a high amount of crime in that specific area. Putting all the civil stuff aside. I mean, I know that building doesn't have any shutters on it. You know, it's just glass, and you could easily just kick it through and steal the safe at the back. But and obviously, people have done that in the past. So I'm wondering, you know, is the pressure on the people who run that spa to be more proactive in preventing crime in that area?
Okay.
I know the crime in question you're talking about. I've viewed the CCTV for that. Because of the time of day that it's at night, the cameras aren't particularly good. It's very difficult to. I've seen the images of the car from various angles, and even with one of our stolen vehicle examiners who's very good at identifying cars, we still can't figure out what make and model car it is. That's how bad the images are at night. I've seen the images of the offender. I have an idea who I think it is, but I certainly couldn't identify them to an extent where I would risk my professional reputation and put pen to paper for a court. But we are looking at that particular person, and that person has been raised as a target for the whole of the area, Colne, Nelson and West Craven. And other offences look like they are indicating that person is active at the moment. In relation to the crime prevention element of the garage, we can advise the garage, and I know we've spoken to petrol stations and other premises in the past. It's very much down to their financial implications and whether they're prepared to spend that extra money to protect their own goods. I think in this particular case for the Kelbrook Road petrol station, it was very minimal theft. There wasn't a lot taken, but obviously the damage and that was caused potentially would have outweighed the cost of the goods stolen. But I think really we have to put the responsibility on the garage there. We're quite happy to give them some advice, but it depends on how much their company want to spend on protecting their premises.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, diving back to the Kelbrook Road as well. I mean, I reported on 101 online someone overtaking me on there. In fact, the car I reported overtook two cars at once. I mean, we were both going the speed limit, and they overtook at something like 50 mile an hour. I mean, it's becoming so common on there. I do wonder if it warrants a speed camera or average speed checks. I don't know. But I mean, it's only a matter of time before someone does that and ends up head-on collision or going through that junction in front of the police station. I know the car that I reported did have to slam on the brakes pretty hard when it came to the red light.
Okay, can I suggest that that's not an issue that we can get Tim to take up? You know, we'd have to raise that through road safety issues and make representations to the Lancashire Road Safety Partnership, of which more later in the meeting, I think. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Jennifer.
Yes, I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I didn't get a notification that it was on at 2 o'clock. But we're coming back to speeding cars, right, down Gisborne Road, just at the junction of Greenberfield Lane and Brogden Lane, Now, as they're coming down there, you cannot see the cars coming down, but as soon as they get to that junction, it's foot down. They've been at it all day today, boy races and other people. It's not just boy races. We've got tractors zooming up and down. Could we not have something around this area before somebody is killed at that junction?
Well, again, this is an issue we've taken up with Lancashire County Council, and we will be picking it up on an item later in the meeting. I don't think Tim's in a position to help us with that. In terms of notification of the meeting, Joanne did email round everybody a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago at least, and the notification of the meeting being at 2 p.m. Was clearly indicated in the call-in notice. So apologies for people who were joining us late, but you are here now. I've got Jane, and then that, I think, is my final speaker or commentator or questioner on this part of the agenda. Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one on community safety issues. A report from over the weekend, young people breaking into Coates Lane School and causing disruption. This kind of ties in with antisocial behaviour, I would think, and we're having increasing amounts of antisocial behaviour in the area, and now Coates Lane School are getting the brunt of some of it. So is there anything the police are aware of or can be done to try and sort that? Thank you.
Tim?
We're not aware of an attempt burglary reported at the school, but we have a report. Do we?
Yeah, we've had a report of youths in the school grounds, so that's something we've put on our patrol plan now. Other than that, we've not had any other reports. I don't know if you're aware of any.
I think the confusion is the school reported that there had been youths in the reception area, and I think they were referring to the outdoor reception area, and I think Jane has interpreted that as they'd gone into reception class. Yeah, so it's a semantics in terms of where the youths were at. I think given the nuisance and damage that they caused, irrespective of whether they were inside or not, they're still causing problems. They're still causing criminal damage. There is one item actually that we've got later on the agenda, but it would be helpful to have the police present. So apologies to committee, but I'm going to bring item 6 forward, which is enforcement action. And the only item on there is in respect of the former Gospel Mission Hall at Valley Gardens. And I think the police interest is just a few weeks ago, Neil Wallin contacted myself regarding the ownership of the building. It was insecure, youths were gaining entry, and Neil was concerned about getting it secured, which he was subsequently satisfied that it had been secured. More recently, we've been contacted by Fire and Rescue with the crew manager concerned that it was insecure, and I know that's been raised with both Neil Watson and Jerry Mannion. The issue remains to go to court again in terms of the Building Act notice. I know Councillor Tom Whip has spoken directly to the owner about this, but I just wonder whether we could collectively take effective action to ensure that this issue is dealt with promptly, and we don't need to come back to it every other week to try and deal with it. So I'm not quite sure who should lead off here. Neil, would you be best making first comment really in terms of the legal activity, court action, and what might come out of that?
Thank you, Chairman. We have also, our legal team have spoken to the owners, and they've emailed us, the owner, about the building. The information he says is that they have been a couple of times to try and secure it, and we were going to instruct Collins as well, Jerry Mannion. I've not spoken to him today to secure it, because when I went and looked at it 2 weeks ago, it was generally secure, but there was a panel missing and a window missing that had obviously been kicked out, but the rest of it I think had been secured. Sharon, it's a question now that there's quite a few contraventions of the Section 79 notice, so it's a case of trying to get into court with them now and getting actual court dates. So we've just recently prosecuted for 2 planning enforcement notices, and the court dates are the 27th of May. So things are moving in court, but they're taking some time to actually get a court date, and those dates will be the dates people will plea. So we're not likely to be hearing those issues until I would imagine end of June, July sometime.
Thank you. Tim, is there anything further from the police perspective?
I've just been speaking to Kevin. I think it was Kevin himself that spoke to you regarding that issue.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we've got it on the patrol plan, and we're just going to increase the visits there and see or if we can see if we can deter and catch anybody around that area. That's probably the best we can do. More than willing to support you in any action you want to take to make the building safer, if we can do that. But if we maintain an increased presence where we can, I think that will help in the short term.
Thank you. I know from Fire and Rescue, they were having a look to see whether they could, from their legislative powers, look to take action through it being a commercial building. But when I last heard from them, I think they were a little bit uncertain of whether they could progress that or not. I think concerted action from all, and in particular concerted action from the owner, would remove the problem, but we can only keep on trying every month at these meetings and in between times as well. So can we note that report in terms of item 6 as well? Can I thank Tim and Kevin for his disembodied presence at the meeting? Oh, hang on a minute. There we go. Thank you very much. Right, and we'll let you guys get on and deal with the rest of your day. Thank you very much for coming along. We're going to go on shortly to planning matters, and we're going to be taking the application for Aynham's Hill Farm. But I just wanted to warn Kevin Singleton, that if you want to put your socks on, you should do it off camera, because we were looking at your toes. I know, it's shocking, isn't it? It is middle of the afternoon. We're not beyond the watershed, so we can't be doing, sort of things like that. Right, moving on to item 5, planning applications for the decision. We've got 2. We're going to take the second one first in our inimical fashion, to do things the wrong way around. Helen, you've been in and out of the meeting. You're back in the meeting. You can speak on this item for up to 5 minutes, and we do have an updated report from Mr. Watson, which seeks to address the email that you sent round to councillors, and I'll get Mr. Watson to refer to that when you've spoken. But can I hand over to you and give you 5 minutes to present your case. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. I had a panic there because I did lose you. Firstly, thanks very much for allowing us to virtually attend with you all here today, and apologies for my nerves. I'd like to start by just briefly introducing me. I'm Helen, my family, Jeff, who's here with me. Jeff tends to run all the operations here at Ahnams Hill. My two children are Tom, who's 25, and Georgia, 23. Tom's worked for us full-time since leaving school, and Georgia for the last 2 years since finishing university. It's worth mentioning she's currently studying for her Masters in Agribusiness, which I do feel shows further commitment from future generations. C&J Hansen as a family have been running this business for the last 60 years with Jeff's dad, Clive. We currently live in Barnoldswick, which is a commute of around 15 minutes in good traffic, but it is becoming increasingly unmanageable. There's generally somebody on site here for at least 12 hours of the day, 7 days a week, really. And the constant to-ing and fro-ing is beginning to take its toll on us all here. Jeff in particular, we find ourselves spending virtually no time at home. The business has continued to go from strength to strength. And as I said, we feel that we are a unique business operating in the area, and we would hope that our application could be considered in that way unique. We've a massive involvement in the local community for farming. We provide a valuable and reliable service, and often that's outside business hours because that's the way that farmers unfortunately tend to work. We've demonstrated our long-term involvement, and we think that the future plans are shown in the commitment both in time and the money invested in the site over recent years. We see our future and that of future generations to be fully involved in the running of our ever-growing business. Over the last 6 months, we've thought about little else other than this application, and I feel that the key points that I would like to reiterate are these. As stated, our absolute essential need adds up to at least 7.5 months of the year, although the day-to-day standard farming activities, in our opinion, demonstrate a year-round constant presence. The fire risks that we have concerns about are extremely high and very, very real, and the absolute pinnacle of our fundamental need to live here on site for the reasons that we've put forward in our detailed statement. I'm concerned that the planning officer has not fully understood the operation required in the ventilation and drying of the hay. Standard fire prevention simply will not play a part in our operation, and it's only through an experienced eye that we've learned to avert disaster this far. Fire prevention is the priority with our business, and the drying and the ventilation of the hay to keep it safe and stop it from setting alight. And we have many hours spent here keeping the temperature cool so that it doesn't combust. And I cannot stress the importance of this enough, and the experience required moving the fans, etc. around in order to prevent this. Obviously, security also has to be an issue for us here, as over the years we've suffered from many thefts, from minor break-ins up to large-scale planned thefts. As you can imagine, this affects morale greatly as a family, and we work hard. And I would say it's affecting Jeff's well-being because he's becoming vastly stressed monitoring the site, especially when you hear of suspicious activity in the area. Ironically, the introduction of the 3 steel security barriers are a worrying factor should a fire occur and the fire brigade need to be called out, as these would delay entrance to the site up to 10 minutes just opening them. The planning officer suggested building a secure compound with surveillance. However, I point out that only last week a wagon was stolen from a compound in Barnoldswick that was what was suggested. We feel the only deterrent is an on-site presence. And so I'm moving on to the sheep. Lambing time is here upon us on this beautiful day. As I'm speaking to you, we did have our sheep in the barn. They're now enjoying the sunshine. I've introduced a breeding programme for a rare breed, native breed, which is the coloured Ryland. I personally have around 20 expectant ewes, but these run alongside our commercial flock of around 55, and that's managed mainly by Jeff and Georgia. Lambing time lasts for about 2 months, and it's a careful operation to make sure that all goes well, and I'm sure you can understand, without going into detail, there's a lot to go wrong. With regard to the planning officer's comments regarding the design of the bungalow, the officer's report was the first comment that we heard about the exterior design, and we were unaware of the thoughts. We've been unable to change the design due to the lateness of these comments, but I can't stress enough, we are more than happy to work with the council and discuss this and make whatever changes are required to the outside in order for it to fit in with its local surroundings. Finally, I'd just like to reply to some of the points made quite late by the planning officer yesterday. Hay production and crop drying is 100% classed as an agricultural process. And as previously stated, our essential need here on the farm is for at least 7.5 months of the year. And I am pleased that the case officer does agree that we do need to be here to supervise and prevent emergencies. And that can only be done by somebody with experience. In conclusion, again, I'd just like to thank you again for your time. I apologise for my shakiness and my nerves. I'm not used to doing this. I can assure you of our best intentions in this matter. We're just simply a hard-working family trying to fulfil what has become a necessity for us over the last few years. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for sticking to time, and I can assure you that that was a very confident delivery. So not that that makes any difference whatsoever, but before I ask a committee to comment, and I'm going to bring Councillor Tom Whip in first from committee members. Because of COVID-19, we're not able to have official site visits, but Tom and I have visited, and Tom's just going to show some images and perhaps video of the site. Before you go into that, Tom, could I just ask Neil for you just to praise the update that we had, which all members may not have seen. Neil?
Sorry, Chairman, I'm just trying to unmute, that's all. Sorry about that. Chairman, yes, you had an email sent to you, quite a detailed email, on top of what is, to be fair, quite a detailed set of information before you. Chairman, new houses, as we all know, in the countryside have to be there on a need to be there. That need, it has to be full time. That's in the National Planning Guidance. So, Chairman, it's for you obviously to debate this. But when you look at things such as stock, for example, Chairman, there are ways that you calculate how much stock on a holding means that there is a functional need to be on site. Otherwise, anyone would have a field, and I'm not saying the applicants here in this position, but 5 sheep and say we have to look after the sheep. There's got to be a basis for doing that. Now, Chairman, you tend to look at about 1,600 man-hours, person hours, to be politically correct, to justify a full-time presence for stock. And for sheep, you give 4 to 5 man-hours per sheep. So in terms of the stock of sheep, even with the special breed, 70 sheep at 75, you're looking at less than a quarter of what you would need to justify a full-time agricultural presence in terms of stock. Chairman, what the second point was not an agricultural process. Clearly, we understand that there are the hay is being dried out. That's okay. But Chairman, you look at, I don't know, Kellogg's or any other food producer, because this is a food process here. They're getting a product in one state, drying it out, and then sending it out as food. That is not an agricultural process. That is changing a product from one state to another to send out to feed animals. It's a food processing process, Chairman. Chairman, point 3, we've had various dates, to be fair. 3 months, 3.5 months to say how long the crop gathering takes. Then, because it's in the east of the patch, it takes an extra 2 months. So it's 5 months, 5.5 months. And now the applicant has said 7 months. But even at 7 months, you've got to take on board, is 7 months for a process, even were you to accept that it's 7, and I think it's a bit less, if I'm honest, from the information we've actually had submitted in writing to us, Is that acceptable to justify a full-time presence on the site? Chairman, the last point is the applicant has also said about the process. I think we do understand the process. The process is effectively what's being said is you can't rely on electronic gadgetry to detect fires, etc. You need somebody there all the time during that drying period, whether that's 3 months or if there's an extra crop, the 5 or taking the 7 months, they have to be there all the time, checking it, using their experience or expertise to say, I'm going to move this fan around here to detect whether there is going to be a fire or not. That isn't somebody waking up in the middle of the night reacting to an emergency. That is somebody having to be there working a full-time presence. Chairman, that's a debate whether that constitutes a need for somebody to have a house in order for that to happen. So my view is on this that somebody has to be there awake to do that. You have to have a member of staff there to deal with that. They will be there on site anyway. And that's the point, Chairman. It's whether you need to have a house to do that, or whether it's part and parcel of your normal functioning of a business. Chairman, we don't agree, obviously, with the applicant on that, but that's something, Chairman, for members to debate, and you may reach whatever conclusion you will on that. But ultimately, there has to be a full-time requirement for somebody has to be on there to deal with these issues, and that's what the committee should grapple with. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Neil. Tom, have you got a further video in terms of the access? Are you able to show that?
It's still uploading from my phone.
All right. Okay. Well, suffice to say that Councillor Tom Whip and I visited this morning. Tom's shown pictures of the site, both from within the holding and from the distance. So this is the approach off the A59. It's going to buffer all the way through. And if Tom wants to speak as well, it'll save me from wittering on all the time. I think it's buffering now. The application site is beyond that, those trees that we could see, and
it's beyond this section here.
Yeah. So we were hoping to give you a flavour of the business, but I hope that the pictures that you've been able to see do give you an idea. It's a poor substitute for a site visit, but the best that we can manage, I'm afraid. Okay. Right, I've got Ken wanting to speak. Ken.
Thank you, Chairman. Although I haven't actually visited Aynham Hill Farm itself in the last few weeks, I'm familiar with the site. Pass it quite frequently. I think that we're looking at a strange kind of situation here, and I do appreciate the comments that Neil has made and the interpretation of the planning regulations, which is honour bound to advisors of. However, I think on another footing, agriculture, particularly in our region, has changed in its nature, a fundamental change in its nature over the last 50 years. The smallholding farm is going to the wall extremely fast. And existing farm buildings are being sold off as private dwellings. The land itself is being collected to form very large agricultural units if you just take the land area itself. I applaud anybody who works to keep agricultural industry going, particularly here in West Craven. I think it's very important to the economy. It's certainly very important to the maintenance of the countryside and the well-being of the countryside. And contrary to perhaps outdated regulations, I believe that there are justifiable arguments that mitigate some of the circumstances associated with considering this application. And I'd like to cite a particular example here. Were we minded to approve this application, it will not set a precedent, in my view, within West Craven or within Pendle. I mean, we did that several months ago with another local application in Kelbrook for, a business that was purely a dog exercise field that was really only operated during daylight. Nobody took their dogs to the field to exercise in the middle of the night. There was, plenty of reasons, if you like, why approval might be granted. In this instance and in this particular application, I think that there is valid cause to consider approval seriously, not least of which it retains the fundamental character of the landscape itself without sort of destroying it. It attempts to use the advantages and the particular climate of the landscape to diversify from what traditionally has been looked at as the farming industry. We all know these days that, as a specific example, climate change itself is affecting England, and the price of hay and straw is far more volatile under today's regulations than it always was, and therefore to have a local stock. Last summer is a good example in terms of flooding, where flooding issues, if you like, caused a national shortage, and people were shipping straw from Cornwall to Berwick-on-Tweed or wherever, I think, therefore, the advantages of having that kind of industry locally are a mitigating factor to the strict stock considerations of whether or not it needs 24-hour presence on site. The business is changing, and I feel that as a council we ought to be encouraging agricultural families who've got generations looking after the land. We should be encouraging them to stay there. And we all accept that in our region in particular, smallholding farming is marginal in the extreme. When you're looking at the sort of greater economy, even with the best pastures that we have here in West Craven, it is still only probably Category 3 pasture land. It's not up to 2 and 1. So all our smallhold farmers are struggling no matter what they're doing, and therefore, if we can find a way of encouraging them to stay on their land, to manage their land, and to diversify to provide an adequate income, then I think we're doing the job that we're supposed to be doing as councillors, rather than strictly observing what the planning regulations say about a particular issue. The issue of less than 6 months a year, I think, is marginal again in another thing. We're talking about an agreed 5.5 and a possible 7 with a criteria of 6 somewhere in between. It's debatable. I would say that if you take the stock and you take the hay straw industry together and the land management, then the 6 months a year is relatively immaterial. It's a very small part of the consideration. I accept the reasons that the applicant has made for consideration in terms of emergencies. It doesn't take much, and I know from experience, having grown up in the agricultural industry, it doesn't take much to have a barn fire and you've lost the stock, which often can be difficult to replace in this day and age, apart from the destruction of the property and everything else. I accept the security reasons for having someone on site as a very valid reason for being there. We're all very much aware that thefts of agricultural machinery, stock and equipment, particularly expensive equipment, is on the rise in the rural economy, and it's a field that I think that we ought to be looking at. Looking particularly at the greater picture, a family farming a patch of land of which their residence sits in the middle of is far better than having gas guzzling farm machinery and or people travelling up and down the country to get from one bit of land to another bit of land with no benefit to society except belching out large quantities of CO2 emissions and particulates. And therefore, I think if you can retain a self-contained unit, in terms of operation of the business, it's a far better climate emergency proposition than having a remote holding and a remote essential business travel plan for the people who are actually working there. There are many, many reasons. I could go on, but I'm sure that other councillors have got an opinion on this. I'm very much in favour of moving the acceptance of this proposal. I hold reservations, as do other people, including planning, about the materials and everything else used, which I think that we can condition. And the indication from the applicant is that they are willing to discuss those issues and willing to work along with council to produce a satisfactory result. Therefore, quite frankly, I do come down in favour of, unfortunately, as far as planning is concerned, I come down in favour of asking other councillors to support the application and to approve it in its current form with the right conditions to achieve a satisfactory solution. I'm quite confident that it doesn't impact and impose on the neighbourhood. It's not highly visible and prominent. It's not isolate in the countryside. It's only a few hundred yards away from the hamlet of Horton and Craven. Has to be on the other side of the border. But, Chairman, I would ask councillors to consider seriously the approval of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Ken, if you're proposing approval, I would second that. I think in amongst there you said that we would need to condition materials, and so I would agree with that, and have it more appropriate material than the design as proposed. Neil, before I bring other councillors in, are you prepared to accept such a decision if committee is so minded?
Chairman, on the basis of not some of Councillor Hartley's points, because I think they would stretch a planning argument to say why you should approve something, for example, CO2 emissions, certainly not a basis to approve an application. But Chairman, from what Councillor Hartley said, holistically, this is a business for a rural worker. I think we couldn't put an agricultural tie on because I just don't think it's an agricultural business holistically, but it could be for an essential rural worker. And we've said that in the report, I think, Chairman. So if that's the logic behind that, fine. Like you, I'm quite happy that we can deal with the individual characteristics of the house. That's not an insurmountable problem. I would, though, Chairman, you're looking at this as a specific justification based on the operation of this particular enterprise. So I think we should therefore tie the house to the enterprise so that can't be sold on the open market and just used as a general open market property. And Chairman, I think that will be a sensible way to do that. On that basis, Chairman, I will not invoke the call into P&I. Okay.
I think Councillor Hartley, you would be content with the suggested conditions there?
More than happy with that, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's moved and seconded. I've got Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I had two questions, really. One for Neil Watson, and he's already answered that, and that was about the condition of tying the dwelling to the business. I've got one for Helen, if I may. Hi, Helen. I'm Councillor Mike Goldthorpe from EAB, who was a bit late in getting onto the meeting. You mentioned the rare breeds that you've got as stock. Have you got extra capacity to extend that flock? Is there enough green grass around there to do that? And if so, is that an intention that you might do? Or I think you said the two son and daughters were involved in that.
Helen, before you answer, I'm not sure that this is necessarily a material planning issue, but feel free to answer.
Well, Chairman, if I just point out, I'm trying to get to the basis of Neil Watson's comments about the number of man hours or person hours required per sheep, and would that be justification? So that's the only reason I'm asking.
Well, thank you, Mike, very much for your question. I'm glad you've asked about my sheep because I didn't want to say too much in the 5 minutes, but it sounds very sad. The sheep mean the world to me. They are coloured Rylands. They are on the rare breeds list. I started small. Jeff and his family have dealt with sheep, commercial sheep, for many, many years. But I wanted to go down the line of breeding these pedigree sheep. So I started a couple of years ago with just 6 breeding ewes. We're now up to 20. And obviously, with the introduction of new tuck lambs, new rams, we will extend further. I have a little Facebook site to advertise the sheep locally, which I do, sell some of them on, the ones we can't keep. And I look into various different products that are made from the fleeces, etc. It's very boring.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Alan.
We can expand. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much, Alan. Mike, you content with that answer?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jennifer, I've got you next.
Yes, thank you, David. Just to say that I will be supporting Ken's thing, you know, to support it. And thank you, Neil, for putting that in about putting the condition on about the house so that it doesn't gets sold with the farm and everything else. But I fully support it because, like I said, we need to keep our farming industry going. And without that, we might not have no food to eat if we start building more houses. But thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. And Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, I think Helen and Ken have made some valid points there, reasons why there should be a permanent dwelling there. Made a few comments. Ken's gone over them about the thefts, you know, increased on rural thefts and things like that. And basically, we want to see our farms and agricultural businesses thriving, even more so in these times. So, you know, I'd be happy to support this motion. Just one thing regarding screening, would there be a possibility to make sure any dwelling there is well screened from whichever angle, you know, you come down, whichever road it is? That's the only point that I really want to make on that one. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, on the screening, and I don't want to upset anybody here, and I appreciate that there's and I think you saw that in the pictures and the video. There's quite a large bund being formed around the sheds, the barns that there are there. I have to say they're not the most pretty feature in the countryside, and I think that a tidy dwelling in the typical farmstead cluster would add to rather than detract from the landscape. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily want to hide it away, because I think it would in itself detract from the rather brutalist sheds. I can see Jeff sort of shaping up in the background there, but yeah, I mean, I think we need appropriate landscaping, but I don't think we want to hide the dwelling, because I don't think that would be at odds with the landscape. It would be typical of the other farmsteads that there are within that drumlin field. And I would point out, Jane, for your benefit, that it is on top of a drumlin. Okay, that's a private joke, folks. Jane's got a thing about drumlins. Okay, we've got a proposal which is seconded. We've had people speaking in favour. Could I ask if anybody wishes to speak or vote against? Please say now or forever hold your peace. Right, I'm not seeing any indication, so I am taking it that has been passed by the committee. Helen, Mr. Watson will be writing to you. Clearly, there's things that need to be settled in terms of the landscape, the materials condition. So there'll be a further period of dialogue with the planning section, but that's approved, and you will get an approval notice in due course. Can I thank you very much for coming along? And if you want to log out, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening as well. We really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on now to the first of the planning applications, which we're obviously taking second, just a bit perverse. And this is for the erection of 15
Helen
dwellings.
Hansden is now exiting.
This is 15 dwellings and new access and land at the junction with Greenberfield Lane and Gisborne Road, Banalswick. We have got some late updates on this. Neil, do you want to summarise what that is saying, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Chairman, the late comments have come in from highways, and they concern a couple of points, Chairman. One is, and the principal one for me is a swept path analysis of the internal layout. They're not certain about the highway makeup and design being able to accommodate bin wagons. So I've asked the developers for information surrounding that. Chairman, the other issues related to the crossing points and whether they were in the red edge of the application site, which, yes, whoever is doing that's pointing. Chairman, that was exactly the same red edge as for the last appeal. Chairman, the inspector dealt with that by way of a Grampian condition, as we are effectively copying in the recommendation that we are making to you, Chairman. There was an issue around the visibility display. Obviously, the access has altered. Chairman, the visibility round there has been subject to quite a lot of discussion on applications and appeal. Chairman, although it does cross the lay-by area, the visibility display, the land up to it is owned by the applicant. Therefore, nothing can be planted around there, or we can control what's planted so that they can get a visibility display across that lay-by. So, Chairman, we can put a condition on to say nothing shall be put in that area. Now, if somebody did want to put something up in that lay-by area, it would have to be a metre or lower in height, and therefore it wouldn't affect the visibility display anyway, were they to put a fence across, for example. So that we don't have to worry about, in the sense of they couldn't put anything higher because we would have control over it, because it will be unlawful development. So, Chairman, there's an issue about a bus lay-by, a bus stop being put in there. That was put on the last scheme, but Chairman, hasn't formed part of anything that's been a requirement either on appeal or for us. And certainly it was shown on the appeal plan, but the inspector didn't refer to it at all in the decision notice, and certainly didn't require that to be there. So, Chairman, that doesn't change. So the outcome of that, Chairman, is that the recommendation is to delegate, subject to the swept path analysis showing that vehicles can actually turn around within the development site itself. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Neil. I've got Ken and Jennifer indicating, but before I bring them in terms of this shaded area here and the lay-by area there, which Neil has just referred to, and I feel like a broken record, because I have mentioned this several times now when we've discussed previous applications on this land, and that is that these areas here, that visibility display there, were required as a consequence of United Utilities putting the whole road in here when they were working on the sewage works. And I can't remember how long ago this is, but I might be going back 20 years now. Perhaps a little bit less, and because it was a waste matter, the issue was dealt with by the county council rather than Pendle Council. The requirement was that United Utilities had to provide this visibility display and this lay-by as a condition of the county council planning approval, and the further requirement was that this land here and that land there had to be dedicated as highway. So United Utilities, as I understand it, purchased this land from the former owner of the field, after a lot of hoo-ha, and I'm talking about years, we finally got the fence setback and this visibility display brought into existence. And I thought, well, everything's hunky-dory. But we now have a plan application that treats all this land as if it wasn't part of the highway, and, you know, some sort of ransom strip that United Utilities hold. So, to my mind, the whole issue about this area, these hatched areas, is absolutely unsatisfactory. It ought to be a highway that ought to be able to resolve some of the issues that are annoying the county council, and also it ought to be possible to achieve a better development. I accept that this has got planning approval, or substantially a very similar development has got approval from a planning inspector. So the principle of the development is set, but I think the detail is very important. And finally, whilst I'm speaking, I know Neil did approach previous owners on this score, but this is an existing bungalow here. If it were possible to provide a footpath along that frontage there, we would have there is a prospect of a continuous footpath right through into the centre of Barnoldswick, and that is a lot more satisfactory than a hopeless crossing point here at a very dangerous junction, and expecting pedestrians to cross over there is frankly stupid. So, you know, I would hope that we could make some progress in terms of getting that continuous footpath link through to the town centre, and we absolutely need to resolve this issue of this land here actually being designated as highway, and I think until we've done that, it would be premature for us to determine this application. I've got three speakers. I've got Ken, I've got Jennifer, and I've got Tom. So I'll bring Ken in first. Ken.
Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate that we've been talking about this particular plot of land for many, many years now, and that the wishes of the local councillors have quite often been overturned, to the end that there is excellent planning permission, if you like, that exists basically for this development. However, the report which is recommending delegation to the planning manager to decide final approvals, I think indicates that there are far too many details of this application that have not been dealt with by the new owner of the land. Yes, we've just seen, or at least I've just seen for the very first time, the proposal for the new splays, which, you know, only gives me, if you like, 15 minutes of consideration on this. There are still issues about parking within the development itself, which particularly refer, I think it's on page 4 of the report, plots 9 to 11 and plot 8 that don't have currently acceptable plans for parking, which could lead to parking within the highway structure, within the development itself. I share Neil's concern that he outlined that the swept path analysis of the turning area on the extent of the estate hasn't yet been done to indicate whether or not we've got sufficient space for a bin lorry to get in and out in the forward direction without having to reverse into a major area. We still have problems with flooding in the area and the flooding treatment process. I know it's an automatic process. There is no plan on, or no indication on any of the plans that I've seen for lighting within the development, so we can make no comment about either its adequacy or its light pollution capability in the area. To me, there are just far too many unknowns for me to comfortably say yes, even yes to delegate. And my recommendation would be, or my proposal is, that this application is deferred to a future meeting of this committee when some of these items have been sorted out in the fullness of time. And I therefore would like to put that proposal on the table, Chairman.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Ken. I would support that. Neil, would you be able, given the late arrival of the information from LCC Highways, to get the applicants to extend the time for consideration on this one?
I can try, Chairman. I haven't specifically asked them, but they haven't come back to me as of, and we only got the information yesterday from LCC. They haven't responded to me, but certainly if you want to defer it, then I will take discussions forward with them on that basis.
Okay, so I think we can take it. It's moved and seconded that we do defer for these issues to be resolved. And I would underline once again the issue of the dedicated highway land, which needs resolving, else it's going to be a problem for ever and a day, because nobody will ever look after it. Right, I've got Jennifer and Jane.
Yes, thank you, David. Yes, I totally agree with what Ken said. It should be deferred. Now, we live down here, but the residents at the other end of Gisborne Road, it's become a single track as Gisborne Road down at this end. Now, we've now got them parking on the pavements from the farm right up to our house now, and they're on the pavement. When the cars are coming past the driveways, you can't see it coming out. Secondly, coming out of Brogden Lane, you can't see any cars coming from out of Barlick on the B. I've written it down somewhere, the B6251. You can't see anything whatsoever coming from the junction at Greenfield Lane and Brogden Lane. Now, if we're going to move, put a Pelican crossing or something, they did say in the report there's some sort of crossing going there. So that will move some cars further up, down past our house and further on where there is a blind spot. With speeding traffic, the Highways Department in LCC have not done their job properly. I mean, there is going to be a serious accident every time. I mean, some people will be coming out. There's been crashes on crashes, but everybody's admitted to their own fault for coming out into the middle of the road, but they can't see the cars coming. So I certainly will be supporting Ken and everybody else on this to delegate it. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Jennifer. Tom, can you just stop the video there? Yeah, I think there's some misapprehension about this crossing point, because what's being talked about is merely a bit of tarmac over that grass that you can see, and then on the pavement on the tourist house side of Gisborne Road, there would be just a few concrete tactile paving flags, and that would be it. There wouldn't be a pedestrian crossing, such as a zebra or a light controlled crossing. It's a far lower standard than is the case. If Tom let the video move on, you'll perhaps see the sort of issue where, with the visibility, I'm not sure if it's captured or not. But as I'm sort of inching out, that van appeared out of literally nowhere and just came in front of our bonnet. And that's the application site on your right-hand side. Thank you very much for that. Right, I've got Jane and then Neil again.
Thank you, Chairman. Ken's pointed out a lot of things regarding the lack of information on this application. As you said, that corner, that 4-lane ends, it's just so dangerous. And am I right in thinking that the inspector visited that on a Sunday? You know, one of the quietest days on the week. We know how dangerous it is, and I just don't think the inspector's taken that into consideration there. Other things regarding cycle storage space and electric charging points. There's various other things. There's so many detailed points that need all bringing together to make this like a complete plan. And to just look at half a plan it's for me, it's not really helpful. So I'd be happy to look at it again at a later date. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, it's moved and seconded that this is deferred to sort out those issues that are outstanding. Well, perhaps sort out these issues together with the highway land that is dedicated as highway and needs to be addressed, and hopefully a continuous pavement through into the town centre. Is there anybody who wants to speak or vote against that?
Chair, we were going to hear from Neil.
I do apologise. Neil put his hand down, so I'd sort of forgotten him. Neil.
Chairman, I would say this, wouldn't I? I suspect you'll know what I'm going to say. It's like Councillor Mills has just said. We have had an appeal. We have had costs against us. This is the third attempt at this. We will try to do this, but Chairman, what I don't want to do is to lead us into a situation where we just get another appeal and another set of costs for some kind of inertia. So we will do our best to get things resolved, but Chairman, we have to take cognizance. We have had an inspector's decision. Whether it's on a Sunday or Christmas Day, it's irrelevant in the sense that the inspector's been and made the decision. So, but we will do our best to try and resolve them for next meeting.
Thank you. Right. I haven't heard anybody speaking against. So the application is deferred in the hope that some of these issues can be resolved. Thank you very much for that. Now then, I did say that we would bring item 9 forward. I bet Mike didn't think he would be waiting an hour and 40 minutes before taking centre stage, but that's the case. So item 9 is reopening of Bunnellswick and Earby town centres. The committee will recall that Pendle Council received a sum of which is European funding for the safe reopening of town centres. Originally, the deadline for expenditure was tomorrow. That's subsequently been extended, as well as the funding from Europe. There is a sum of money that was allocated from Pendle Council, which is a revenue funding, and we'll have reference to that in this report. And I'm not just sure how it's going to be distributed, but there is a further sum of just over £81,000 that the government recently announced. My assumption is that will be distributed amongst the various town centres in much the same way as the previous one, but I might be being a bit presumptuous there. We've got Mike Williams, who's been dealing with this headache, and I'm going to bring Councillor Tom Whippin, who has been dealing with Mike. So, Mike, I'll go to you first and then bring Tom in. Thank you.
So, thank you, Chair. Basically, the report lists the financial allocation, the allocation that's there, and what has been spent in terms of the posters. I think can I share screen? Will it go to?
Yeah.
I think reports to bring that up. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. Go down to the so in consultation, obviously with Councillor Tom Whip, we've agreed to some sanitizer units, stations there, and those will be Councillor Tom Whip very kindly pointed me in the direction of quite a few businesses that will accept those. So the businesses will take them, they'll put them on the street outside their premises, and they'll look after them. Basically, they'll take them in the evening, and therefore they'll be protected, so they won't be vandalised, which is a good thing, hopefully. It counts through Councillor Goulthorpe and Councillor Carter. Hopefully, we'll be identifying ones for AB also. I believe that that Tom, you wanted to possibly have some more in Barnoldswick in terms of the hand sanitisers. I don't know, you want to mention something there.
Yeah, we do want some more. We can come on to that after you've gone through the rest of the stuff if you want.
Okay, that's fine. So the other thing is safety posters. I mean, that's a small thing, but obviously those can be handed out through the staff with environmental health who go around to check that businesses are obviously doing the correct things within COVID regulations. There's also a purchase of face masks, which can be done obviously from a safety perspective. There was also a discussion. The tables and chairs, I think, were outside the eligibility currently of the grant. So I believe those have been purchased out of the £6,480 from the area committee. So I believe those have been already purchased, as indicated lower down on this report. And those cost, let's have a look, approximately just over £3,000. And so obviously the remainder of the area committee money allocated, non-grant area committee money, is £3,412 approximately. And then there's also the mesh barriers, which I think we were in discussions of, and those certainly could be purchased hopefully through the eligible, so hopefully those can be purchased through the grant. And so they're approximately about £60 each. I know you did some research on that. Thanks for that, Tom. And those safety barriers would come in at, I think, is it been indicated on this? There was 20, I think, about £60 each, wasn't there? So that's is that about £1,200? I think something like that.
£1,260.
But yeah, that's right. So hopefully we'll put that in as a grant item, and if people are happy with us proceeding on that basis.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think there's just one issue in terms of the report. The face masks. I think Joe at Barnoldswick Town Council got better prices on those. I'm not quite sure how that's panned out.
I think in terms of well, there's loads of face masks out there. I mean, and there's lots on Amazon which are cheaper, but they're very flaky in terms of quality. I'd rather trust people who are providing the sanitisers. We can buy a direct award as long as it's under £2,500. Place a direct award in terms of a quote. It's not, to be fair, it's not a massive amount of difference. But in terms of the quality of the products, you don't want to be buying something off Amazon that is not genuine and looks it looks pants, and basically it is pants because it doesn't do the job properly.
Well, yeah. I mean, for I mean, they're not products that are going to be washed and reused. No. So, I'm anyway. I'll just leave that. Tom, can I bring you in, please?
Yeah. A couple of other things. Obviously, it says in the report we've had the chairs and tables ordered. They have arrived. Well, some of them have. And in the Bungalow Town Centre, we're wanting to have those tables and chairs out on a sort of daily basis, letting people sit down. If I could share my screen now.
So if you take Mike, if you take yours down.
Yeah, I'll take mine down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this is the town square picture from today. I mean, you can see every single bench has someone sat on them. Some people had to sit on the walls. So, I mean, there is demand for more seating in the town centre. Obviously, we've just had it renewed. We might as well make use of it. We've had initial discussions with the shops. They're happy to help, and they're obviously very supportive of the idea. In terms of we need for that to work, obviously we've got the meshes, which is mentioned in the report. They are for the terrace fencing around the compound in the square, and they're coming through the ERDF grant because they'll have the safety messages on. My thinking is a couple of those could also have advertising for local businesses on too, potentially free of charge advertising space. The other things that I was wanting approval for was some A-boards that we could put out explaining how to use the space appropriately. Clean up after yourselves. There's a bin over there. There's a hand sanitizer station just there on next to the fencing sort of thing. So we'll be looking for approval for those. I can't remember the pricing off my head.
Tom,
I think, sorry.
Tom, can I just say, I think we settle on the water ballast frames rather than the air frames.
I'm just using air boards as a generic term, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the A boards, obviously they can be eligible for grant potentially if obviously we've had this discussion where you can move a panel and you can put the safety messages in there, and then obviously after a period of time, if you've got removable panels, you can obviously change that message from a safety message, which is eligible for the grant. Long term, you could put whatever messages you want in there about, I don't know, seating in the town or about events or things like that. So that's acceptable. Also, in terms, just want to mention in terms of tables and chairs, it's been mooted that this new extra money that's obviously doubling up and going into next year now beyond the June deadline for the new 80,000 pounds, that the eligibility criterion will be better fitted for this process, because a lot of people have fed back to our grant masters, as it were, and said, well, we want to encourage people to use the town centres more, and the eligibility criterion for your grants is not very flexible in that regard. So they took some cognizance of that, and going forward, it might be possible to do something like purchase tables and chairs in the future grant potentially.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, Michael, about the hand sanitizer stations. On my count, I think there's an extra 6 from was it 8 that we'd initially talked about, that I thought would be appropriate in Barnoldswick.
We have initially we've got 12, haven't we? We've got 8 and 4 for AB and 8 for Barnoldswick. Were you saying that there'd be even another 2 on top of that potentially? So that's 12, there'd be 14 or even 16 in total?
Well, I've counted about 6 shops, which I think would also be appropriate, spaced out, which would have one in Barnoldswick. So I would go up to a total of 18 for the West Craven area.
Just to double check, that's 12 for Barnoldswick and 4 for AB, yeah?
No, that's 14 for Barnoldswick and 4 for AB. But obviously that is if AB doesn't want more.
Right.
I mean, 4 was just an estimate. I don't know if Councillor Colin Carter managed to get around the shops and ask.
I'll bring Colin in.
Yeah.
Colin,
could you put your mic up?
Yeah, thanks. Colin, that's it. You're on.
Sorry about that. Yes, I did go around to the shops and managed to get 4 businesses that were very interested, and I've forwarded details on to Michael.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 18 in total. Look, I don't want to spend hours going through the minutiae of how many chairs, how many tables, how many hand sanitizer stations.
Yeah.
I think if committee's agreeable with the general thrust of what's being proposed, that we sign that off, we delegate any further decision making to myself, and we will just crack on.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And if there are any suggestions in terms of what we can do in AB, I mean, clearly there isn't the open space to have, a seating area as is being proposed in Barnoldswick. But any suggestions, if people feed them through, we're more than happy to take those forward. Yeah.
Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
I've got my hand up. It's clarification I'm seeking from Mike. Reference the financial comments where it says £6,480 is Pendle Council / Area Committee funded.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the money that I got from the outturn last June. Yeah.
Yes.
Mike, you've gone on to mute.
Yeah. No. I'm
sorry. Too many mics. Too many.
Oh, sorry. The other mic. Sorry.
The other mic. Thank you, Chairman. That clarifies that. Thank you.
Yeah. So within that 6,480, there's a third of that earmarked for EAB, and there's more flexibility with using that funding. And indeed, I mean, if we have a town centre in Salterford or a town centre in Kelbrook, which we don't have, that funding would be, we'd be able to use it there as well. All right. Can we agree that course of action? Thank Mike Williams very much for coming along to the meeting this afternoon. I hope it's been educational for you, Mike, and we'll let you get on with other duties. I
especially enjoyed the toe waving episode earlier on.
Oh, there you go, Kevin. Your toes have become famous, right? Well, there's a message popped up on the screen saying we've got 5 minutes left in our allocated meeting time, which was obviously a very optimistic 2 hours estimation from committee section. So with that imperative in mind, I don't think we're going to finish in 5 minutes, but we'll crack on with the rest of the meeting. And that was a beautiful yawn there, Neil. Thank you very, very much. That's fantastic. Right. So we're not going on to item 10. We're going to go back now to item 5B and appeals. The report on the agenda paper says that there were no appeals at the 22nd of March. We have received notification of an appeal today, and that's for the land, or indeed some people might call it the water of the Barnsley housing land application by Seddon Homes. And you recall committee and then Policy and Resources turned this down because it's a water storage area in terms of heavy rainfall. I'm not quite sure if Seddon Homes think that they're King Canute and can turn the water back, or indeed if the planning inspectorate can turn the water back, but they wish to build on at least this side of that wall in all this water here, which extends for several hundred yards behind where I'm stood when I took that picture. So that application is has been lodged. It is now live, and people have until the 4th of May for them to be able to comment on it, and we will see what we will see. Nothing else on appeals, Neil, is there? No. Right. Thank you very much. Item 6 we've already dealt with. You'll be pleased to know. Item 7, the capital programme. There are 2 requests for funding from both Salterfirth Village Hall and Kelbrook and South Village Hall. I'm looking to Mike or Colin on these 2.
Yes, I'll propose that we accept them, Chairman.
Yeah.
Both en bloc.
Yeah. So it's moved and seconded that we approve of those 2 applications for £1,000 and £800. Anybody wanting to dissent? Nope. Okay. And mention in there that of the Bonalswick allocation, there is £500 left. I think, Councillor Tom Whip, you want to propose something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to propose that this allocation, the £500, be put into a pot for development of an arboretum at the Leckcliffe Park in Bonalswick. It's a project we've been wanting to do for a couple of years, and I think this would get the ball rolling.
Okay, could I just check with you, is that under the custodianship of Bonalswick Town Council, so it'd be a transfer to the Town Council?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Ken?
Apologies, I would more than happy to second that proposal to move the 500 with a suggestion perhaps that we get some specimen trees for the arboretum that we're proposing.
Okay.
But second it, I'm quite happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Could I just seek committee approval to that? Are we all in favour? Anybody against? No, that's carried as well. Right, so the Bonalswick funding is cleared out, and my estimation is there's £1,829 left from the Earby Ward earmarking unspent. Okay. Are we moving on to item 8, which is the minutes of the traffic liaison meeting, and this is a meeting that's held between the Highway Authority, Lancashire County Council, with officers from Pendleborough Council, and we're looking at the minutes from the meeting on 25th of February 2021. Now then, Ken, I'm not quite sure if we've got legacy hands here or not. But
No.
Ken, I know you wanted to speak.
Yeah, Chairman, that isn't a legacy hand, no.
Right, sorry.
I'm particularly disappointed in this report. It looks as though West Craven isn't, well, Lancashire County Council or the Traffic Committee itself isn't listening to West Craven at all. All the West Craven suggestions that we looked at have all been rejected. No further action taken by county, and I refer particularly, since the pages are not numbered, to parking concerns 5.6, 5.7 and 5.8, I think, which roughly around the middle of the report. All of them have been kicked into the long grass, and it just sort of strikes me that yeah, we're out on the edge of the borough, so what, you know. I've also got a few concerns about item 5.9, the Foster Road one. I just think that this is an unacceptable way of dealing with things, and there has to be a far better way of making sure that local voices are heard when this traffic liaison meeting convenes and talks about things.
Yeah.
I'm quite disappointed with it. I note it. I don't think it's worth discussing any further as far as West Craven's concerned. It's really a waste of time submitting stuff to it.
Well, I tend to agree with that. I think there needs to be a thorough revamp of the way in which highway issues are dealt with or perhaps ignored, which is the case at the moment. In just picking them off in terms of Parkview tourists at Salterfirth, there's resident-only parking request, which was approved to go forward by this committee. It appears that subsequent to that, the this liaison committee of county council officers has agreed that there should be no further action. And I think that you know, I'm not saying it's a constitutional crisis, but you know, the will of the elected councillors is to accede to the residents' request for residents' parking. And although we meet as an area committee, the two sitting county councillors serve on this committee with our borough council hats on, and we fully agreed with that. And here we have the county council officers saying, well, no, you can't. I think it's a disgrace. On the second item, the mini roundabout request for Victoria Road and New Road Junction at Earby, and I will put this up. This is the area in question. Not only is it a very confusing junction, Victoria Road here, New Road there, the A56 here, but I mean it's also in a deplorable condition with all this. You can see this patchwork quilt of potholes all over the place, and the county council turned up the other day, I think it might have been yesterday, and they just dealt with that little bit there. The rest of it's dropping to bits. So, you know, we've suggested a mini roundabout here to facilitate traffic vehicle movements, make it safer, slow traffic down on the A56. And what do we get? It was agreed no further action. To my mind, utterly disgraceful, and this needs sorting out. And then the next one, Skipton Road, Barnoldswick, advanced weight restriction sign, big issues with vehicles going over Coates Avenue to the industrial areas, Silent Night and other companies at Longing. No further action. This is a simple sign, an advisory sign to try and reduce the problem of HGVs contravening that traffic regulation order, and I just cannot believe that it's no further action. So yeah, I think we need to make a very loud protest, and hopefully by the time that the county council is reconvened, that we'll have a rather better ability to actually get things done. So I would suggest that we take this up at a high level with the county council and hope that there is a root and branch reappraisal of the way in which these things are done. Thank you. Mike, are you wanting to come in on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
As this is our last meeting of the municipal year, I find it quite refreshing that I'm 100% in agreement with both Ken and yourselves. Just going through this list, it seems to me that West Craven are the only people that no further action is going to be done with. Everybody else on the list, the agenda, has got something happening. I could possibly suggest that it's a bias, but there we go. Also, there are 5 representatives from LCC on this committee, and 3 from Pendle Borough, and 1 we will work on the premise that the constabulary is neutral. So we're outnumbered to start with. It might be a worthwhile thinking about the future that maybe the chairman of an area committee, like our own, should be in attendance at these meetings if we're going to get anything out of them whatsoever. But it seems to me the problem's at LCC and we need to work back from there. But yeah, I've got a couple of issues I would normally have put on the table. I just think we're wasting this time. So 100% support on that, Chairman.
Thanks, Mike. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. Speaking of wasting our time, members might recall I had a request to increase the speed limit from 20 to 30 on Manchester Road. The Traffic Liaison Committee came back and said we'll look into alternative measures for the concerns, which I think ended up with a sign saying community speed concern on the side of the road, which I thought sort of was completely opposite of what I was saying. I mean, I don't know if it'd be worth putting it back on their agenda to look at again. They're probably just going to look at it and no further action required. But we might as well put it back on.
Well,
we should at least get a report back of what alternative action they had taken, whatever that might be.
I don't disagree with that, but I think the whole process is fundamentally flawed and needs to be sorted out. But more than happy to add on that bit to the specific items that we're complaining about today. Are there any further comments? No. In that case, have we got across the board agreement on that? Yeah. Yeah, people are nodding. Thank you very much. We've dealt with item 9, and we're now going on to item 10, items for the discussion. And I do have, for the first one, just as an illustration of what we're talking about. This is the A56 through Earby, Skipton Road up here. This is Colne Road. That's a junction we've just been looking at from out of that window, I would think. And this is the water flowing down from surcharging out of this drain here, and there's a further drain further up where it's surcharging. It's coming out of the drains and then flowing down the road, and it is on this occasion it's been taken by the drains further down. and this is one of the locations that we highlighted last November. I think I've got a different picture that's showing it further along Skipton Road with it spreading across there, and there's Albion Street. So there's a problem with this. This has been reported ad nauseum to Lancashire County Council to do with the highway drainage, and it's also been flagged up with the Environment Agency in terms of the inadequacies of Victoria Clough, because the likelihood is that it's Victoria Clough that isn't taking the flow, and the water's coming out of Victoria Clough and then flowing along the highway here. And as we are aware, Environment Agency have begun work this week to put a bund in on the opposite side of the railway embankment. That will allow a reservoir of water to build up there, but because the water depth will potentially increase during flood conditions, that will pressurise the system. So water will be under pressure and surcharge out of this system even more perhaps than it does today. So there's two linked items. First of all, there's the adequacy of the highway drainage, and secondly, there's a question of all the constrictions and blockages on the Victoria Clough culvert which haven't been resolved. So what I'd like to ask committee to do is agree to two things. First of all, to make further representations to Lancashire County Council to resolve the highway flooding issues in this area, and secondly to the Environment Agency, asking them to expedite as a matter of urgency the need to clear the constrictions and blockages caused by service crossings through the Victoria Clough culvert. I hope that's clear enough, Joanne. Tom, are you wanting to second that?
I will second that, Chair. And in doing so, I'd like to make a suggestion as well. I was talking to Gareth Aspig, Pendle Council's drainage engineer, and we got into a conversation about sustainable urban drainage schemes, or SUDS. And I know from that discussion we talked about permeable paving, and it's a technique where the road itself has capacity to hold standing water, and they use it in other countries in Europe very sustainably. And so instead of your standing water being on top of the road, it's inside the road, and you know, on a flat stretch of road like that, I think it would be a good solution. And I know it's not Lancashire County Council's policy to do permeable roads like in some other countries, but I think it's certainly a solution that they should look into with you know, sustainable urban drainage. And I'd like to put that forward to them as well in our representations. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think you're stretching my patience a bit, but if committee is agreeable to add in that to the resolution, anybody object? No. So Joanne, will add that onto the resolution as well. And I'm sure Tom will provide you with a copious technical paper on the merits of such permeable paving. Thank you. Right, can we move on to the next one? And really it was Kevin Singleton, the man with the toes, who asked for this to go on to the agenda. So Kevin, can I bring you in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to point earlier on, you said it was this village hall that was after the money for the decoration. It's actually the parish council.
I'll put my hand up. I'm sorry if I've...
it's just in case anything goes through. We don't...
Yeah, the agenda actually does say Village Hall, but I'm sure if I looked back on the application form, it will say the parish council.
Thank you. So I did just regarding the mill at Salderford. When I moved in 2 or 3 years ago, one of the reasons I did move in is because there was a swift colony in the mill. And I thought, oh, what I could do, I can sit in my back garden, watch the swift colony, watch them up closely, take photographs. There was 2 other colonies in the village, and they've both disappeared thanks to the owners. For whatever reason, one put mesh up so they couldn't get in, and the other person just pointed it up. So they're no longer nesting. It's the only place in the village we have for these summer visitors is in the mill. And I'm just ahead of the thing before the planning application comes in. I sent some things out to the councillors, and it's considering swift houses, swift bricks that can be added to the building to give them homes. They're in such decline as swifts. There's something like 65% down, and I'd just like for the committee to consider, and I don't think it should just be the mill at Salderford, but also any building that's being put up in Pendle. I think the cost that were passed on to the developer would be absolutely minimal, and I think it'd be good to see if we actually progressed and started. I know you have an agenda for climate change, but simple things like this. And I know I've sent things through, but the swifts are an absolutely exceptional bird. To have them screaming round a village in summer, and they're only here a short time. There's no problem with bird muck smell or anything because they spend all their life in the air. They even remove the small feces from the swiftlets and deposit it elsewhere. But they spend so much time in air, they poo in air, they do everything in air. And I can pass councillors more information if they're interested in swifts. I'd also be happy for anybody to come along during the summer months, and I'll point out the swifts and their activities and what they're doing. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm not sure that going into the intricacies of swift poo is too much after the toll gate, but I'll shut up and bring Ken Hartley in. Ken.
Chair, thank you very much. Much though I was interested in what Kevin has to say there, I'll just simply say that I support that. I believe that the planning application is more than 3 years old now for the conversion of the mill into 14 apartments and its associated parking. I'm quite sure that the new owners will have some plans for it, but certainly it has 100% my support that we ensure, since it has been empty really for so long, that we do recognise that nature has a habit of taking back what we humans throw away. So 100% support behind the proposal that when any new application comes forward, we ask our planning and organisation to recognise its recolonisation by wildlife. You never know, we might find a colony of scorpions in there sometime as well.
Well, there's bats, there's all sorts. Just going on from that now, currently there's people using the building for storing white goods and furniture. And today somebody's turned up and dumped an old shed on the site. So,
okay, Neil, can I bring you in? Two aspects. First of all, in terms of the Swift boxes, local plan part 2, is that something? I mean, I know we talked about provision for wildlife many moons ago when we were looking at the core strategy, and it was said at the time, well, that's an appropriate requirement when we get to the second part of the local plan. So can we actually include that within the local plan, and presumably Kevin and others could put comments in before the 6th of April, by the 6th of April, requesting that to be a policy matter. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is prompted by what Kevin has just said about the current use of the building. where I think the previous residential approval must have lapsed for non-implementation by now. But if we have this new use, is that something that needs regulating, or is it established use? Neil.
Chairman, in that order, Chairman, we've got the Environment Bill, which is going to require net gains on all developments going forward. So you think about a house extension, how are you going to do that? I think it is going to be around bat boxes and things of that order. And certainly the local plan part 2 is proposing that we get net biodiversity gains. I think it's a good idea, to be honest, to put boxes on there for swifts, and we do it regularly for bats, so why not for swifts? I think that's a good idea, Chairman. In terms of the other use, my recollection, it was offices, B1 offices. You can change under the general permitted development order from B1 to B8. It used to be 240 square metres worth. It's been increased. I can't remember the exact figure now by governments. It's 500 square metres or whatever. So it's likely to be permitted under that regime. But John, I'm interested in what Kevin said about the sheds being dumped there. I'll ask the Jason Manning, the new enforcement officer, to go and have a look at that.
Thank you. I think the committee is agreeing then that we do note the use of Salterworth Mill and other buildings for wildlife habitat, and express the wish to include provision for such wildlife in any future planning applications. And then I think if we just note the current use of the building, and that the enforcement officer is going to have a look at that. Okay. Are you happy with that, Kevin? Yep.
Very happy. Thank you.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much. Moving down the list, the next one is the closure of, well, it skipped an old road, Foulridge, but it has a consequence of closing Stonetrough Lane to through traffic, because it's a route between Kelbrook and Foulridge, and I made representations to the County Council. I have no idea if they've been acceded to or not, because the County Council haven't actually confirmed this or not. But there's a road closure because of work on the Rock, a prominent building on there, rebuilding a retaining wall. That means that it's going to be closed for several weeks, and the advertised diversion route is via Cobb Lane and then down Noyner Road in Foulridge. So I've put up a picture of the narrow state of Cobb Lane. Sorry, that's a reinstatement or a repair in Kelbrook. And that's sorry. This is we're back on the lane here. It's very narrow. There are very few passing places. Very difficult to navigate, and it's just utterly inappropriate as a diversion route when the other lane is closed. The obvious thing is to use the A56, and given that the County Council hadn't and still haven't come back to me about a suitable, sensible diversion route, I thought, right, bang it on the agenda here and get representations through the area committee. So my proposal is that LCC is requested to insist on a diversion route, a suitable diversion route along the A56, rather than using inappropriate Cobb Lane and Noyner Road, etc. at Foulridge. and I'll take that quite lovely picture of Blacko Tower against Pendle Hill down now.
Second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's seconded. Any further comments? No. Right. I'll take that that is carried. And the final bullet point, no, it isn't, sorry, second to last. To consider parking problems on Waterloo Road at Kelbrook. This is quite an intractable problem. It's in part has been exacerbated by the use of people curbside parking during. Sorry, just ignore that one for a bit. During the lockdown, when people have been working from home, there's a problem with parents picking up and dropping off children for school, and I'm afraid I can't find the pictures I've got of the parking problems on Waterloo Road, so I won't bother carrying on looking for them anymore. But you know, potentially there's a whole range of solutions, like creating more parking space. Well, where would that be? You know, getting a school travel plan, less people using vehicles to bring children to and from school, all those sorts of things. I don't think the area committee is in a position to sort this problem out, but I think the area committee can help to get a fresh discussion started with all concerned to try and resolve issues and find a way forward that may help. So what I'd like to propose is that the area committee request a meeting between the Highway Authority, the school, representative residents, the parish council, to see if we can find any solutions, any suggestions about how we could help with this problem. Does the committee support that? Yeah? Okay. I can see people are getting worn down now to 2.5 hours of meeting. The final item on this one, condition of land at West Graven Business Park. And again, we've got pictures, but in brief, there's a problem with some of the business properties allowing litter to collect, and that needs addressing. And I think, Neil, that would be, you know, perhaps a Section 215 approach, untidy land. But then the second item is litter accumulating on the highway. We did get a bin put in because there's a lot of drivers pull up there, but there's a considerable amount of litter on the grass verges. So David Walker, if it's possible to get some action to get that tidied up, and then the businesses couldn't point the finger and say, well, look after your own land first, sort of thing. I've got Jane and Ken indicating on this.
Chairman, thank you. Just really quickly, I'm going to have to go. I've got to go for my vaccination. I did tell you about it earlier. So
you did, yes.
Sorry about that.
We're nearly done. Thank you ever so much. Thank you. Ken.
Chairman, I do support that proposal. One of our big problems in Pendle is attracting new businesses, and it's not really a good thing to have a prospective business owner looking at available sites to locate when we can only show him a landfill. Effectively, you know, the amount of litter and stuff that's being dumped around there is quite appalling. Yeah, I think that we owe it to ourselves, if we're serious about growing Pendle and attracting business, that we make the potential sites look the best that they can possibly look. And therefore, I support the proposal, in entirety, that we do get it really looked at and ask for some local action through our own organisation to clean up the highways around there.
Thank you. Anybody else wanting to comment? Does that have the support of committee? Yep, thank you very much. I can hear somebody knocking at the door. It might be our contractors who've been working outside. Tom is disappearing into the landscape to go and answer that. So we're going to move on now to item 11, which is just to note the outstanding items, if we can do that. And then item 12, we come to exclusion of the public and press. I've no idea if anybody's watching. I've not been monitoring the YouTube channel, but if anybody has followed the meeting for its entire 2.5 hours, can I thank them very much for their stamina and perseverance. As it's the last meeting of this council, because we'll have a whole new council following the elections in May, can I thank all the councillors who've contributed to the work of the area committee. Can I particularly thank the staff, the officers who have supported the area committee in all its endeavours. Can I thank residents for their support too. We're now going to move exclusion of the press and public because of some pettifogging rules about privacy, which we don't necessarily agree with. And Councillor Witt would probably have Councillor Tom Witt would have a rant about it had he not gone to answer the door. So very quickly we'll close the live stream and we'll go into the closed part of the meeting. Thank you very much.